Oh, now next up here is a guy that, God, I might have played with him back in 2004. And
Yeah,
I can see you, Scott, too. You don't have to be on video. I don't have to see your
dude,
ugly. I don't have to see your ugly mug, but it's okay. Are
I
you in a
know. I
store?
think
Are
we've
you
known
in
each
a
other for
storage
18
facility?
years.
Are you in a storage facility, by the
No,
way?
I'm in my garage, which is like a full podcast studio.
Oh, oh,
You
okay.
would dig it.
Oh, it looked like. Oh, yeah. Okay, that was your garage door. Oh, you're on the Edge podcast. Oh, you got the whole acoustic panels and
Yeah, we
everything.
got it all.
All right, Scott. So I used to play with Scott back in the day. Probably one of those. I don't know if he ever played a day shift at the bike, but way back when they introduced 5.5 at the bike, which was a 500 cap back in the day, which was probably in 2005, and then they
Yep,
didn't change it to 300 to 1,000 until I don't know, at least 5 years later.
it's a
But
long
cool.
time.
All right, awesome. You got a hand for us here?
Yeah, man. When the WPT was going on at the Win, I was meeting a friend over there for dinner, and so went to go play a game. Unfortunately, all the 3-5 games were taken, and so just in the interest of time, I ended up playing the 5-10 game, which is like way above my head on skill level and stakes. But I'm just a recreational player, so I'm like, whatever. We'll just take a shot in that game, and it's the pretty typical 5-10 uncapped game, forced $20 straddle. There's two old guys who are horrible, who make the game probably worth me sitting there. They're like limp calling three bets and things like that. But the rest of the table, besides me, are like under 30-year-old Euro kids that probably play for a living.
This is the this is
Um,
this is the uncapped game at the Win Vegas, right?
yeah, yeah. So
Which,
I'm like effectively
yeah.
the short stack at 3,000. A
Mhm.
couple of the old guys who are horrible have 10,000, and several other people have 30,000, 40,000 on the table. So
For
that kind
whatever
of messes with my head and the dynamics a little bit.
for whatever reason, I always hear that this game gets euroed up pretty good.
Yes,
This Win game.
yes, a lot
Yeah.
of sports bettors, a lot of Euro kids, and so it's fun. It's a tough game. I've played it a few times with about 50-50 results. So yeah, so I'm the effective stack at $3,000,
Okay.
and again, there's like a lot of weird limp call three bets going on, and then of course the Euro kids taking advantage of these two older men in the middle who just seem to be like calling stations, which is weird for a game this size. So a couple limpers, two limpers effectively, and then it gets to the cutoff. And again, one of the Euro kids raises to about 110. So it's 5, 10, 20, two limpers at 20, and he raises to 110, which I thought was a bit on the small side, maybe just a little steal action there.
By the way,
So I'm
are
on
some of these Euro kids like are they taking like in between hands? Are they going like doing push ups or some shit like that? Like I think I saw
oh
like somebody on Twitter
worse than that, man. They're doing like hand analyzers and they're making sports bets, and they're like one guy's watching an iPad while watching his phone while doing push-up challenges. It's just the
while
dynamic of the
playing
table is
like
weird.
open face pineapple and going. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
it's some like a couple guys are playing online with each other. It's like it's a weird thing. So
Okay, so the
anyway,
110.
uh, so
Yeah.
110. I'm on the button with Ace of Hearts, Queen of Spades, and I three bet to 250, which in retrospect just seems like a weird size because it might bring in the two limpers who have been limp calling three bets, and definitely doesn't do anything to make the cutoff bow out of the hand. But anyway, I three bet to 250, so now the pot's effectively 575. As surprisingly, the limper folds, and now the cutoff just calls.
So fold, cutoff calls. Yeah, I mean, obviously this is very small three bet sizing here, and the thing that I would say is like it's good that obviously the limpers folded because no matter what the cutoff had, if one of those guys had like limp called your 250, I just feel like this Euro guy's gonna go like he's gonna like four bet like 100%. I don't know what you were prepared to do if you four bet with one of those limpers calling, but I'm sure he wouldn't have been able to help himself from for four betting in the if somebody had limp called in between. But that does not
Yeah,
happen.
don't worry. I screw up the sizing again, so we got plenty of time.
All right, so the
Um,
pot's like 540 or something like that, right?
yeah, 575 because of the
Oh,
straddle and the
575.
limpers
Okay.
calling the straddle.
Yeah.
So the flop comes down Ace of Spades, 10 of clubs, 5 of spades.
Ace of spades, 10 of clubs, 5 of spades. Hero has ace queen in this kind of weird, well, used kind of small sizing dynamic. Okay.
Yeah, so the villain checks.
Mhm.
I down bet to 200, and the villain check raises me to 600.
So hero bets 200, which is, I mean, it's, yeah, I mean, it's about yeah, about 30% of the pot, just over 30% of the pot. And then this guy, so cutoff check raises to 600.
to 600. Yeah. And my thought was here either, you know, call and be prepared to play for, you know, the remaining couple grand I have in front of me, or just fold and get out of Dodge. And then I think my whatever my ego or my lack of experience got in the way. I'm like, well, maybe he's just pulling this one test to see if I have an ace, and if I call, he's going to shut it down. But in retrospect, I think one, since I'm the short stack of the table, two, the dynamics of the player. I think just too often they go for a three street or a three street, two street or a three street bluff, where it's like I kind of have to make the decision to either re-enter the action with a raise or just cut bait and get out of Dodge. I don't know what you think about that, because I think I talked myself into a call, but without really having a plan.
No, I think I actually disagree with you. I disagree with you 100%. If you want to continue, the play is to call. I don't think I would three bet here, but there's a couple of things, and I would call, by the way. I think it's just your hand is too far up here to you get the queen of spades. There's a couple of things about the queen of spades in your hand, but I would play this as a call. The only thing I would say here is, even no matter how aggressive you think these guys are, this board is different than if it, say, for example, came out, 9-6-5, where he thought that he could attack the board with some sort of light draw. For the most part, even if he flops like a flush draw here, like, even like, I mean, it's a little bit different because it's like, it would be a combo draw, but say the board was like ace 9-5 and he had like the king high flush draw, like king jack of spades or king queen of spades or queen jack of spades. He's going to be doing a lot of calling, because in general, theoretically, this isn't going to be a board that's going to be check raised from the out of position player when you three bet here all that much in this configuration. So I think that it is a little bit surprising to see you get check raised here on this particular board. Now, you have the queen of spades, which blocks some of the combo draws. Now that the other limpers folded pre, he very well could be calling with tens. He doesn't always have to four bet that off. And he also could be calling with some ace five. He doesn't necessarily have to four bet them. And he could have some ace 10 too. And by the way, he might have all the ace tens, right? Like ace 10 off,
Right.
which was an ISO, because your three bet was so small, a hand that would be a hand that he would fold to your three bet, but because you made it so small, he's coming in there. So there is quite a bit. And who knows? He might even have ace five off here if he was isolating those guys and like your three bet was a min raise. I mean, there could be a fair amount of value in those because of your three bet here. So that's a little quirk here that we can't, with him pretty much continuing almost 100% of what he opened as an ISO because of your small three bet size, he is left with a fair like volume of hands. With that being said, does that mean that he's also left with like queen jack and king jack off here that he might be taking for a check raise too, that would have been folded off pre to normal three bet sizing?
I was starting to think maybe like in his range of hands, like most likely thing he might check raise with is like a king 10 of spades, a jack 10 of spades. So, flopped a pair and some type of weird flush draw, or 9-10 of spades.
I think those hands, I think those hands with a pair call more often than they start to raise. But I do wonder, like I said, it's interesting dynamic again, because he might have some more offsuit hands that make aces up than he would normally have because of your small sizing. But then he also might have some gut shots that he decides to check raise with, like king jack and queen jack, that he would not normally have king jack and queen jack off because of your normal size. I mean, I think you have to call, and I think it's a square call, and let's see how this develops. So I have no problem with the call.
Great. So the turn is the 7 of spades. So it brings in the front door flush, but also now gives me a redraw with the queen of spades.
7 of spades?
7 of spades.
Right.
And villain bets out. The pot's about 1775. The villain bets more than one half pot at $1,000. And looking at my stack, if I call 1,000, the pot's now going to be 3,800 with only $1,000 effectively behind. So at this point, again, kind of from the beginning, messing up the sizing, I get in this spot where it's kind of a fold or push. I don't know, I don't want to get blown off the hand on the river if I happen to still have the best hand for $1,000 extra, 900 effective extra dollars. So I just push for the remaining. He bets 1,000. I have about 21 or 2,200 left over. I just push.
So this is interesting here too, and part of the reason why I picked this, part of the reason why I picked this is that what you're talking about here is that you're like, well, I only, the guy's going to bet 1,000. If I call, plus 37.75, I only have 21 or 2,200. I only have 1,100 left. Now, if you were out of position, I would agree with you 100%. Where, like, say somehow this hand got flipped around and you're out of position and he bets again on the turn, you don't want to just call if you want to go with it, because if he's on some bluff and then he's just going to give up at the end. If he's on some bluff on the turn when he's in position and he's just going to give up in the end, or when he makes something better than what he thinks that you have, he'll bet. You just give him a reverse free card, like as a free roll. I do wonder here, though, because you're in position, if you can just plan to just go call. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you're just going to call. It's just going to go call. Like, maybe in position here, you might make it look like you picked up a high spade and there's a possibility that you might fold. And maybe he makes a blunder where he'll bluff again. So again, if I'm out of position, I agree with you. I would just get it in, but I kind of maybe want to go call here. And I don't think there's any river really that's going to make me not go call. But I think that might be slightly more efficient here.
So make the same mental commitment that we're getting it all in. Just parse it out over the turn in the river in case he's trying to run some eccentric bluff.
And this guy Bezo in the live chat says you are jamming into a highly polarized range. I think that's a wise thing, where if he has a highly polarized range where maybe he has some like king jack off, right? It's just nothing, like literally nothing. If you just jam here, he's going to fold. But if you make it look like you're sticking around with a high spade and he doesn't know that you're still calling anyways, if it misses, you might actually get the extra money. So I think here I make my decision where, all right, I'm going to call off, but the more efficient way to play here is to go call. So
love it.
Yeah.
Well, the good news is the villain thinks about it for a long time for the extra $1,200.
Mm-hmm.
He finally calls, and now all the money's in. The river pairs the bottom card, the 5, and I don't really like the win rule where it's like if you were the call offer, or if you pushed beforehand and you got called now on the river, even though he's first to act, they made me flip over my hand first. I flip over ace queen, and he turns over ace queen for a chop, and we both kind of breathe a sigh of relief, like both of us feeling like we were behind.
Wow, that is crazy thin. So he's got ace queen and he took a check raise. Wow, that's crazy thin. What I was going to say is that as I just talked through that, the only thing to be said, because obviously we know the result, because what I was like, let's say for example, you call and you won, and then I was going to be like, let's try to figure out what the villain had. Maybe it's like king jack with the king of spades, king jack off with the king of spades or something like that. And then the question then is like, well, if he didn't bluff the river, then we've missed out on us jamming turn for like the extra 1,100. If he didn't bluff through, you know what I'm saying? If he had king jack with the king of spades, but well, that's awfully thin. That is awfully in between.
And when I asked him, he's like, hey, I thought you would be 3-betting the button with any pair and any ace. So I was kind of just praying you had like ace 8, ace 9, ace jack with the jack 8 or 9 of spades. And he's like, I was 50% prepared for you to turn over ace king with the king of spades. And I was like 50% prepared for you to turn over some craziness that you just got out of line on the 3-bet and couldn't let it go. And so, he had thought through it, but I think, maybe the fact that I was sitting on 3,000 and he was sitting on 40,000 had something to do with it.
It could be. I mean, and it might be another thing too, where in a 3-bet pot, who knows what the quote unquote, he's trying to play GTO, the solver says, who knows, like once you get to the flop where you've got 5 pot size bets left, which is what you had, once you do that C-bet, he thinks it's good to get it in late position versus late position with ace queen on ace 10, 5. I usually in live play, that hand's probably not going to be good necessarily at showdown, but yeah, definitely an interesting one for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks
Appreciate
for the
time, Mark.
Yeah, no problem.
Shoot me an email sometime.
All right. Thanks for the call.
Later.